I know you've had a few beers next door, and then you started with our horn dog, which is kind of our another one of our high gravity beers. By the way, I've been drinking since I got on an airplane this morning, so bear with me as I muddle through this. Now, it's again remarkable, great selection of food with the horn dog. I think the shrimp went real well, and the sweet potato tamale was delicious, and the sauce that went with it went well with the horn dog. Good. I'm looking forward to seeing what goes with the double dog. So double dog, everybody looking at a bottle? Yep. Let me warn you, this is 11.2% alcohol. Okay? Okay, I don't know what you normally drink. That's a lot. Right. Okay? It's also going to be very hoppy, so as you're drinking this, either out of the bottle or out of your glass, you can kind of get that nose hoppiness going. The hoppiness, they're called IBUs, International Bittering Units. So this one is, we claim that it's 85, it's actually closer to 100 IBUs. The higher the number in IBUs, the more hop profile it has to it, or the bitterness level. So that when this finishes up, you're going to get a, they call it a twang, if you will, on the back of it. A what? A buzz. A buzz. Yes, you'll certainly get a buzz, but what you're going to get is that finish is going to be very hoppy. So hang on. So you get a little bit in the nose, the aroma. It's going to be kind of malty. And then you get that bitter finish at the end. So Double Dog doesn't have a real cool story. Other than Double Dog is basically our pale ale's big brother. Does that make sense? Did you have our doggy style pale ale earlier? Yeah. So you had the double or the doggy earlier. This is basically its big brother, and I don't know how far in depth on brewing did you get into at all? Do you want to get into a little bit about brewing? A little bit? No? Not really? We want to hear a great story behind it. Let me tell you a little bit about high gravity beers in general. Okay? Which we're not the only one that does high gravity beers. A lot of breweries are doing high gravity beers, and it's going to be similar to making coffee. So when you're making coffee, you put in, let's say, a pound of grain, a pound of coffee grounds. I don't drink coffee anymore because I'm too already, and my doctor says I got to get off the caffeine. So if you make coffee and you do your first run of coffee and you use your 1 pound of coffee, and if you only put in half the amount of water that you normally put in with 1 pound of coffee, you're still extracting out all of the flavor profile out of that coffee with half the amount of water. So with high gravity beers like we're making here, not only the horn dog but the double dog, we basically use the same amount of grain but half the water. So we're still extracting out all of the sugars that we would if we would. So instead of using 5,000 gallons of water to make a batch of beer, we use 2,500 gallons of water to make a batch of beer, but the same amount of grain. So it's called what's known as the first running. So if you think about, again, coffee, you'd end up with this real strong cup of coffee, right, if you only use half the amount of water. Same thing basically with the beers when they're high gravity beers like this. Now, some breweries, and we've tried it, we then do a second running on this same grain bed, and it ends up being a real weak beer, about 3.5–4% instead of 11. It's kind of like making a second batch of coffee using the same grain or grounds. We've all done that. I mean, I used to be broke, and the next morning I'd get up and go, God, fuck, and I'm out of coffee, so I make it just like a 1 cup just so I get my thing going in the morning, and it's weak, it sucks. And so that's kind of like second runnings of coffee or like second runnings of beer. So, Double Dog, I know, I'm sure Rachel's talked to you about our labels and everything. Hunter S. Thompson was a dear friend of the brewery. His illustrator does all of our labels, Ralph Steadman. So, have they heard the story about Ralph at all?
No.
A little bit. So, Ralph Steadman, let's start with Hunter S. Thompson. Perfect. Yes, familiar with him. Wrote for the Rolling Stones, wrote a couple of books, wrote a couple of movies, or books that were turned into movies. His illustrator for all of his books started doing our labels back in '95. Hunter passed away 5 years ago, Ralph still does our labels today. He lives in London, England, and Ralph's an interesting character. He obviously designed this label. A true artisan. Our latest label was the Raging Bitch label. If you haven't seen that, it's obviously quite entertaining. But Ralph's the kind of guy, we send over the style of beer, and then we send over what we want to call this beer, and then Ralph sends us a picture back. And so we get the Raging Bitch picture back, and it's kind of black and white, a little bit of color thrown in. We look at it, you know, and we look at it like this, and you go, wow, what's going on? Because only Ralph can tell you what's going on in his brain. And we asked for about 6 changes to be made to this label. And Ralph makes one change, sends back an email, and he goes, that's it, bye-bye. And that's it. You know, he's an artist. He says, so you either take my change, the one, or to you, and I won't do any more labels. You know, so that's kind of the deal with Ralph. So we end up getting what we get, and it's fun stuff. And again, this is kind of out there. It's a big dog with a diaper on it. That's me when I turn 55. I only have 20 years to go. So glad they make the pens. So anyway, that's kind of, oh, this will stand up nice. Very nice. So anyway, that's Double Dog. Enjoy. Have fun. I think tonight.